I have risen to explain how I made 150 pages of shonen manga in 100 days to complete the 4th volume of my series, Apple Black. Let go! So, I needed manga assistants. I already had a few, but sometimes people grow to do other things. Even manga assistants in Japan, they're not manga assistants forever usually. They usually kind of break out to do their own thing, whether that's still in manga or another different job. But there's so many cases of somebody who used to be XYZ manga and now they have their own manga with their own assistants. So I really had like one left. Put out an Instagram story to find more, found all of them, added them to my Discord. I have a Discord for manga assistant applicants. I gave them a little test where I gave them a page to kind of tone. I've done it before where I even had them ink, and then I picked the best 4. Once the new guys are settled in, I had weekly meetings to kind of get them up to speed so we can get done what we needed to get done. What I found out the first time I had manga assistants was that I would do the sketching and I wanted to see if they could ink like me. Like, could you ink like me? It was part of that initial test when I first got manga assistants, and I had them reach out to me on DM and I put them in the Discord for the manga assistant applicants, and then I picked what they did when they inked and they toned. And I still found that when I was sketching, and I'll have to sketch in a way where they know what they're really looking at, versus if it was just me and I did a sketch, I know what I was trying to do anyway, so it's easier for me to ink it, versus them, I have to sketch it in a very detailed way to the point where my sketches pretty much look finished. They might as well have been inks. I send it to them, then they'll ink over it, and then it comes back to me, and then I have to edit their inks. That process was too slow. And that's when I started experimenting with the idea of just skipping the whole sketch phase. Because if I could do my sketches to look like inks anyways, why don't we just jump and try that? And that's when I made this video. You have your rough, your less rough, and your fine. If we remove the less rough, you save time. And I implemented this approach to all my pages, and it saved so much time. This way, I could have the assistants, rather than ink my stuff, just focus on inking the backgrounds while I did the characters, which is actually the more traditional thing to do. I tried this with 2 chapters from volume 4 a couple months ago, and I actually did about 40 pages in a month, and that includes storyboarding as well. Now the script is already written, but storyboarding, setting that up, putting that in Clip Studio Paint, all of that. I tried it with the assistants where I did the characters and they did the background, and I did about 40 pages in 1 month. And there I knew it would work. So this time around with this new method, I had 6 chapters to go and about 100-ish days left. The last time I did it, and when I did 40 pages in a month, I'm the one who even toned it. So for this one, I knew that I couldn't tone it all by myself and still hit the deadline. So I also needed to make time and room to teach them. So luckily, that's where all the weekly meetings came in handy. Teach them whatever I needed to teach them. Show them YouTube videos that I have on the channel to kind of break all this stuff down. Luckily, these artists are also talented artists, so it wasn't too hard. They already knew some of the stuff, but I needed them to be able to ink and have it be uniform amongst themselves and kind of close to me, and do the same for toning, while I provided them with all the necessary references they would possibly need for maybe how characters are supposed to be toned, or how certain buildings are supposed to look, all that kind of stuff. For the rest of the volume, I finalized the writing. I did the storyboards, but the storyboards are very rough. I'm inking directly from the storyboards, no sketch phase. Since my sketching, I can kind of sketch it to where it looks like inks anyways. I thought that's the way to go, because if you look, even in current mainstream manga right now, a lot of the inks are like hella rough, but they still look good and purposeful. You look at Jujutsu Kaisen, you look at Chainsaw Man, which, funny enough, I haven't necessarily read those series, but I've seen the artwork. And there's many more like it, where the artists kind of have a little bit more freedom stylistically. And sometimes it's kind of rough, especially if they want to hit their weekly deadlines. Sometimes they straight up don't hit it for their weekly deadlines, but then they refine the artwork for the volumes later down the line. There's a notorious My Hero Academia page that was in the magazine that was incomplete. So this happened. Storyboarded all the remaining chapters. I prepared them in Clip Studio Paint. I made sure to cut the panels with the panel color. I have several videos on how to use Clip Studio Paint to create your manga pages and just draw manga pages from start to finish that you guys can go enjoy. Get more of that sauce. But I prepared all of it. Then I created the speech balloons and put the words in already. That was the first thing I did. So I wasn't even drawing, I was just kind of laying down the land. I had to prepare the pages, if not, they had nothing to do. The backgrounds that I wanted them to ink, they can't ink it off of my rough sketches from the storyboard. So those are the ones that I sketched. Those are the only times I had to sketch. I did a quick sketch of what I wanted the background to look, and then trained and guided the assistants to ink based off of the sketches as best as possible. And the results were really good. Sometimes they'll ink the backgrounds. During the meeting, we'll do a little review and critique, and then they'll learn from it. And luckily, this is something where you kind of teach it a few times, and then after a while, they get the hang of it, and you don't have to teach it again. After laying down the speech balloons and the text, and obviously cutting the panels with the storyboards placed in each frame folder. But basically, I just prepared the page, share the page with them, so while they're inking backgrounds, I can focus on inking the characters. Some of the storyboarding did take time, but you can see me on Twitch. There was a period where I was storyboarding live on Twitch, and it was fun because you nerds kind of motivate me to stay focused and keep inking, and it's fun for you guys to also see how I break stuff down. So in many ways, while some of you are inspired by what I do, you guys kind of inspire me to keep going. But at the same time, I need to find ways to discipline myself without you guys, because obviously there are some pages that I couldn't stream, or I chose not to stream because they were too spoilery. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna give it all away now. I tell y'all, you do not want to miss Apple Black Volume 4. That's all I'm gonna say. I also did some inking on stream on Twitch, and sometimes I even do them on YouTube. You can go look at the live videos here on YouTube. You might find a couple here and there. The weekly meetings were also there to make sure everybody's on track and everybody's on the same page. Improve on their inking. Maybe sometimes the background line work was too thin, or maybe it was too thick. At the end of the day, it was never going to be perfect, and I know it's not going to be perfect because they're learning as well, so I took that into account. So even when they're done with the backgrounds and the backgrounds come back to me, I still edit them at least a little bit. But the less I have to edit, the better. So each time they sent back backgrounds, I had to edit less and less and less, therefore making my life easier. Also, me knocking this out faster than it would have been if I was doing it all myself. Discord was also great because anytime they had a question, they could just ask right there and then. I'll get a notification on my phone and I'll answer their questions as fast as possible. If there's a question on how this background should be inked, or is this right, or is this wrong, they could easily have a screenshot, share it with the group, and everybody can give their 2 cents, and then we move on. Quickly realized that I still needed to save time. And so I needed them to also help with the toning. And so the same process of teaching them, and then they'll come back to me to edit. But with each review, I'm doing less and less and less editing because they're getting the hang of it. And eventually, there'll be a bunch of little mini white mangas roaming the earth. It was also cool because one of the assistants was actually a student of mine when I taught one of the first manga classes in UTA, University of Texas at Arlington. So that was really cool to see from student to actually helping me out with Manga Pages. So everything was going great. I'm inking the characters, they're inking the backgrounds, but something happened. They finished the backgrounds before I could finish the characters. Which makes sense when you think about it. Even with some manga pages, there's some pages that don't have any backgrounds, so they didn't have anything to do there. So while they were free, I saw this as an opportunity for the pages that were available with characters and backgrounds. I would need to come in, put them together, and then send it back to them to begin toning with my instruction. And all this was great. It eased my stress a lot. I also try not to be too picky and let go of things. Even when you look at Japanese manga sometimes, you can clearly tell that somebody else did the backgrounds while the main artist did the characters and all the action and stuff like that. Because you can slowly, subtly kind of tell in the style. In some cases, some background artists are like background artists for multiple series at the same time. So I left room for that kind of freedom, but at the end of the day, it was still kind of close enough to where if I never told you I had Manga Assistants, you would just assume that I did everything myself as usual. Again, going back to Jujutsu Kaisen, you see the style and the characters, but then you see the backgrounds, they're much cleaner. Same thing with Chainsaw Man. So there may be some of that here, but at the end of the day, it actually ended up looking much close to what I would normally do because I'm the one kind of training them. Sometimes the manga artists have a super manga assistant that's the only person they deal with, and I actually engage with every manga assistant all the time. They just communicate with one, and that one kind of relays the message to everybody else. That one trains everybody else. But all of this worked. As weeks went by, the manga assistants got more comfortable, built more confidence. I was happier each week because stuff was just getting done very quickly. When you're doing all this stuff, again, you got to know yourself and know what works for you. I'm more likely to finish stuff once I start it, and I'm even more likely to finish it if it's close to being done. I don't know if anybody can relate to that, but that's how my brain works. Once I start it, I kind of want to keep going, but sometimes stuff happens, life happens, mental break, you need a stress reliever, you need to take a leak, go play soccer, do something else so you don't lose your mind. But if it's a daunting task, it might be overwhelming. But if it's already so close to being finished, then my brain is like, yo, let's just knock it out. Let's just knock it out. So these guys being able to get my pages to a point where they're almost finished, it was a great motivator for me to just keep it pushing. I noticed that assistants didn't just save me time, it also gave me a break, which I think was necessary. I could sit down and draw 10 pages in a day, but I'd be so exhausted. Like, you do mentally need a break. Sometimes you don't even want to be sitting down that long. That's also unhealthy. So I think Manga Assistants also allow for that, which is great. If a colored page came up, those I handled myself completely, but I'm not even opposed to the idea of getting another color assistant maybe that would kind of color to a point and then for me to come finish it up. Or if they're super talented, then they just do it. It happens all the time in Western comics. There's a lot more division of labor within Western comics. Somebody's doing the penciling, someone's doing the writing, the lettering, the inking, layout, you name it. Different people, one team, one project. Sometimes this gave me room to deal with other things like YouTube, Instagram, personal life. When prior, if I stopped doing the comics, then it stopped. Versus here, I could be doing other things and I know that the comic is still being made. I also know with this team and this system, I could even do more pages if this was like super all I did super full time. And then also you take into account that my knee exploded. So there was a good couple weeks in there that I literally could not draw. I couldn't even sit down. In fact, there was like 2 weeks in there that I was just laying down the whole time. But after all that, boom, Apple Black Volume 4 was done. 2 chapters, 40 pages in a month, including storyboarding. And then I took a break to do other things on YouTube. And then at the beginning of this year, in those 100-ish days, 150 pages done with this team, not including the writing and storyboard. I had to do that prior to prepare the pages for the assistants. If not, they would have had nothing to do. In fact, some of them even had extra time to help out as assistants on different projects, because Morgan, the creator of Soulbeat, also needed assistants and she got them and then she finished too. So these are assistants that even did double duty. I said duty. Speaking of duty, Apple Black Volume 4 is the duty that you do not want to miss. As you guys know, notoriously, it usually takes me about at least 2 years to finish a volume, and I was able to do it in a couple months while doing a bunch of other things in between. That's crazy. A lot of manga artists have varying schedules, but they're all hectic. Artists do not get enough sleep.
平均すると1時間とか2時間の睡眠になっちゃうんで、あんまり睡眠になっちゃうんで、あんまり
Now, Yazawa says many manga artists work a whole week with maybe only 1 day off, maybe 3 days to story, 1 day to writing, 1 day for penciling, and then 1 day for inking, which inking just 1 day, that's a lot. The research here for Masashi Kishimoto, the creator of Naruto, his own schedule. Monday starts with a rough draft based on the storyboard he drew the weekend before. Tuesday finishes the draft and then does the inking in the evening, and I'm assuming this is majority of the chapter and not just like 1 page. And then Wednesday submission, meaning that everything should be done by Wednesday. That's crazy. Still no rest Thursday, even though you've submitted, because you need a meeting with the editor for the continuation of the story for next week. Friday builds on Thursday, but now you move forward, creating the plot and then the storyboards. And then you must finish storyboarding on Saturday so that Sunday, maybe, you have a free day. You know how artists are, procrastinate. I can see some Sundays where it didn't finish on Saturday, so it creeps into Sunday, didn't get any rest. He even talks about how he's gotten sick and even have to be hospitalized at some points. I can relate. His cells were dying. All you aspiring manga artists who still want to do it. Now, obviously, he got used to it, but even look at the projects of today, he's probably more like a supervisor while other artists kind of pay their dues. Many other manga artists have warned about the schedule. It exacerbated the condition of Gege Akutami, the creator of Jujutsu Kaisen. Some thought it was a 100-meter sprint, only to realize it was a marathon. Just look at this schedule for manga creator Shibashi Hiroshi. He literally has just 3 hours of free time. That's wild. See his Japanese version, English version, you got room for storyboard, there's room for editor meetings, fixing the storyboards after the editor meetings, colored illustrations, because somebody's got to do those colored covers, volume covers, promotional illustrations. There's room for that here. There's room for sleep, at least it gets some sleep, but you can see some of it only getting like 5 hours. And really you need about 8, right? 5 is not the worst in the world, but you need more than that. Only 3 hours of free time, some writing here and there early Sunday, which I assume is what scenario means. Manuscript stuff, I guess that's working on Manga Pages. So this is a wild, intimidating schedule. I tried to create my own, but it never stuck because sometimes some stuff just hopped on my plate that I didn't plan for. And then if I had a list like this, then you're gonna have to slap on social media here and there, which I just kind of put to the back burner for the past couple weeks, just so I can hit this deadline. But normally I would have to have room for social media to promote the comics because it's not like we have a huge budget to promote the comics. And I want you guys to be able to read what I make. Apple Black Volume 1 to 4 available. Go enjoy. Treat your brain to some goodness. But in order for you to hear that, I need to make videos, TikTok, Twitch, Instagram, Twitter, and obviously the YouTubes. And I have to promote all the other Saturday AM series because, again, we're still really small. And until we have like a huge anime or something like that, or go crazy viral online, this is what's gonna have to be. Or all the YouTube people who talk about manga and anime start to talk about us a little bit more, or honestly at all. Till then, I gotta do it. Luckily, we have been getting bigger. A lot more artists have been writing articles, which I think is really cool, but it's not enough, especially if we're gonna compete. My series, Apple Black, starts with an A. So when you go to the bookshelf and you look for Apple Black, it's right next to Attack on Titan, and the C's for Clock Strikers right next to Chainsaw Man, and Oblivion Rouge right next to One Punch Man. So we have to be competitive. And you can't be competitive if nobody knows about you. And then if you're not selling, that's not good. And so I have another video talking about the harsh realities and harsh truths of being a manga artist or an author of any kind in these stores and how cutthroat everything really is. So you need to be honest with yourself and find what works best for you, because obviously Japan and the way they handle work is different from how you handle work in your country or whatever country, and so you need to find what works best for you. Also, there are so many cases of manga artists getting sick and getting stressed out. Again, I can relate. Maybe while the schedule is impressive, especially if he sticks to it, you might want to tweak it to be healthier. And I think Trent on his channel does a good job of breaking down what that might look like. What I did, and honestly, it was chaotic when it comes to a schedule. So it wasn't like a super fixed schedule. But what I knew is I just needed a system that worked. Creators and manga assistants that were available so that we can make the magic happen, you know, make that secret sauce, Everything is calculated, but this wasn't too different for me, especially because I needed to finish given the deadline. And the deadline was honestly in April, but I managed to finish kind of early May and then really review and clean up anything I needed to clean up mid-May. I have never done 150 manga pages in 100-ish days, ever. The most I could think of, especially juggling all the other things and other responsibilities I had with live, school, YouTube. As you can tell, I've not been able to make as many YouTube videos, and my knee exploded. But in memory, the best I've ever done was like 60 pages in about 4 months. But that was all me. You need manga artists, as all these guys have. And so I needed to work with the manga artists I got, especially because they've been manga artists for the first time. So I need to train them to be efficient for what I need, to ink like me, to tone like me, to create a system where we can all share all the files easily, be efficient with all the days available while not infringing on their free time as well. Good way to share files, good way to have the files be organized in the layers and Clip Studio Paint and everything, so anybody can just pick it up and continue in cases of emergency where maybe a manga artist kind of has to drop out for whatever reason, which did happen. One of the assistants got sick, and so it was very easy because of how I structured things for another manga assistant to kind of continue where they left off. So unlike the Japanese mangaka or just full-time comic and manga creators, I'm kind of full-time, but not really, because I have other stuff to do. You know, the book is actually about 224 pages, but this 150 pages were what was left and what I had to do before the deadline. I think Apple Black being a super full-time thing for me, like top super unlimited priority stuff, is if the books start to take off. So I really appreciate those who've purchased any volumes from volume 1 to 4 and going to help out with 5, because I've already began working on 5 with the writing and storyboarding and all of that. If we like get an anime or like 500,000 subscribers of mine go buy the book, not going to happen. But if y'all truly give my series a shot, like some of you have, and you've left great reviews on Goodreads and Amazon, which I really appreciate. But if a lot more of you give my series a shot, volume 1, 2, 3, and 4. Once you open volume 1 and then you're done closing volume 4, I guarantee that you will want to keep reading volume 5, 6, 7, the list goes on. You will believe and you will think that this was either good to super great, depending on who you are, and you have a blast. And shout out to those who've already given it that shot. Volume 1 to 4 is kind of like Apple Black Season 1, so you would have really given it a shot, and I can almost guarantee you will like it. These are all the chapters holding all the pages for Volume 4. You can see everything in order, and you guys can see all the chapters. I'm going to hold off on 32 because it might be a little bit too spoilery, unless you guys have supervision or something. do all the fun YouTube engagement stuff unless we have beef. I'm on other socials as well. Swipe Manga. And I'm Audi 9000.